because that's not the sexiest thing to be told or to do, but it is the healthiest thing you could do for a business.
Ooh, you man. Now I gotta know the acquisition. I know you started getting traction. You talking about 1 in 4 users are in Ivy Leagues that are getting internships. Like you got the data to suggest that it's working and working effectively, right? So I know you're getting those calls. What does it look like? How were you vetting the opportunities that came by? What was, you ain't got to tell us the numbers of the
That's
deal.
a whole other podcast. I mean, this is what I'll share on that. So
Yeah.
I never started the business and thought about the end state as the outcome. Like I never thought about like an exit. And so it was a very reactive process. And I shouldn't say it took years. It was over the course of years that we eventually decided that we would sell the business. And so we had starts and stops. We had people come to us with offers. There were pump fakes. There were crazy nights that involved crazy companies that I have stories that we can share offline, like craziness. Very high highs, very low lows. And if you're not streamlined and running a very tight process to try to land this plane correctly, it can happen in many different ways. Like there's this like saying that companies aren't sold, they're bought. That's great. If a company is bought, that means somebody comes in with a crazy offer and like it's like that's great. That God bless those people where that happens. Like, but that is like going to the NBA. Like it really is hard, and it is very rare that happens. Most companies are sold. We were sold. We went through a process. We had bankers. We went out. We talked to a lot of companies, and we eventually found the best fit for us. And so that was our process. And I was very happy with the company that acquired us. And it was like a crazy experience to go through.
Yeah. I know when in the process of acquisitions and stuff, one of the most painful processes, especially that have to go through it multiple times, is the due diligence process. When the company's doing it, and you got to pay for the due diligence to supply to certain, that shit gets annoying. You know what I mean? Sometimes it'll make you be like, look, I ain't gonna be doing this, but so many times. Well, every different company, you got to do it again and again. I need updated. I need to do like, you know what I mean? So I know the due diligence process was a pain in the ass. We talk about in business, right? The overall scheme of business is to develop a business, grow a business, and then technically eventually sell the business off, right? As like a part of like the old school business model, right? So what I want to ask you is like, I understand that you built this thing was true to your heart. I want to know like what made you actually, it's successful now, and I'm pretty sure it's successful enough where you like, I could live off of this thing. What made you actually feel like you wanted, this is your baby, right? This is your child, like another child, right? What made you and your partner say like, okay, we did it, but we want to sell it now. We rather step apart. I don't know if they gave you an offer, because a lot of times when companies acquire other companies, they keep you on as like, C-suite individuals to help run the company and stuff like that for a certain number of years and things of that nature. But what made you really be like, I've done all I can do with this, and I think it's time for the next step?
So what would be helpful? Would it be helpful to give you the emotional state of affairs in your mind when you're answering that, or would it be helpful like the literal stages of like why we chose to sell the company? Which one would be more beneficial?
They both sound good.
Yeah, a little both is good.
All right, so let's start with like the literal. We ran the VC race. So we did not build a business that was built off of the foundation of being profitable. We built a business that was built off the foundation of external capital that gives us the fuel to scale as quickly as we can to capture a market that hadn't been captured previously. So even though we didn't capture the market because we had the capital to go capture that market, we would eventually grow in and then acquire that market. That's a different approach than going customer by customer by customer and hiring based on like that profit that comes in. So it's a very specific way to build a company. So literally, we knew that the time was to sell the company because we were looking at a burning runway in front of us. And the choice was, do you go out and raise additional capital to get further diluted, or do you just find a home for it so you can land the plane?
Message.
So it's like a very specific, literal reason why we chose to land the plane. And eventually we believed that by landing the plane in a much larger platform would create more impact for our community members because we'd have a lot more resources inside of a much larger home than what we could do by ourselves. If we kept running the race, we would need every year or two to raise more and more capital to grow as large as we could to provide the impact that we felt we could get if we had just been a part of a larger platform. So that's like the literal reason why we sold it. The emotional reason, I think, why we came to the conclusion is that we did it for 8 years. And, like life kind of happens in four. If you go back to like high school and college and things like that, like, it's kind of like, so I felt like I did 2 tours, if you will, of it. And my first daughter was just born at that time. And there were other things I wanted to do. And, I really loved what I was doing, but I felt like I was not striving towards my potential anymore. I felt like I was at a place where I didn't have the same joy. When I first started the business,
pivot moment again.
it was Ryan and me, the two of us sitting in a room, and I was the CEO, but like there was nothing to be the CEO of. Like I was doing everything. At some point in time when I looked up and we had 130 employees, that wasn't what I didn't start the business to manage 130 people, right? So it's like, so you find yourself doing different things, which is fine. But like, I love the 0 to 1. I love the ideation stage. I found that I was being disruptive to the business because I was constantly having ideas. And when you're building a thing, like you can't keep like, at some point you got to stop the pivots, but my mind just works like that. I want to build 30 companies at one time. And I felt that like I was not allowed to do that. So it felt like it was the right time. It felt like it was the right time.
That's real. That's real. How'd you meet Doug Crazy Self? My brother Doug, man. You started Jody AI, man. Shout out to our big bro Doug Melville, man. Love you, babe.
Doug, wherever you are.
So
He knows what this means. Doug knows what this means.